Hello, hello, global leaders. Welcome back to another show here, the Life School Masterclass Show. I'm blessed to be back with you with another amazing guest and conversation. And today we're going to go talk about all about globalizing and diversifying. I know that for a lot of the listeners here for our show, we're all visionaries, CEOs, always interested in growing, diversifying, creating impact, and utilizing business as a channel to do more good in the world. I'm your host, Elona the Parry, and I help companies scale their purpose and profits so they can do just that. And my today's guest, Sally Pederson, is based out of Canada, doing this amazing work diversifying and helping companies diversify themselves globally. So I'm so blessed to be able to have her here, have her knowledge or expertise or life experience that she will share with us in the hopes to add value to you. So, Sally, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for coming here today and having this beautiful conversation and adding value in our space.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I hope to give all the listeners some really good information and some ways for them to take action to protect their assets.
Absolutely. Information is golden. Apply information is where magic happens. And we always learn from each other as humans. Those are kind of like my life principles. So I love it. So I usually let's start with some of the problems that you've seen when it comes to companies trying to diversify themselves globally. What are some of the main challenges that you have seen that sort of repeat over and over with all the people that you've been able to support thus far?
Well, things just aren't exactly black and white, like everything in life. But what I've seen a lot of people do, and I'll give you an example, is I was talking with somebody from the United States, and they said, "Well, I'm going to move my company to Dubai because there's 0% tax, and currently that's changing. It was zero, now it's 9%. A few areas are still zero, but they're phasing that out by 2026." And I said, okay, well, but what do you do? How do you make your money? And he said, well, I make my money off of YouTube. And I said, great, but what's going to happen is once you move your company to Dubai, you have to fill out documentation saying to YouTube, this is where my company is, this is where I want the funds to go. And because there is no tax treaty between Dubai and the United States, they will automatically withhold 30%. So you're now paying 30%, not zero, because you're in Dubai. And so we have to look at how would people are making money, and also the banking. Well, lots of people are like, well, I use Stripe, I use PayPal. That's great, but those things aren't available in every single country around the world. So it's more than just that, oh, this country has 0% corporate tax, I'm going to move my business there. We have to look a little bit more at the bigger picture.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, these are the new environments that we're operating in. So obviously, knowledge and understanding as to what is the best solution so that you are investing in that area. I find that is the most important piece in growing a healthy company and something that we could sustain for sure. And Sally, so having said that, what are some of the maybe things that you have utilized to help companies that you believe have given them the biggest transformations around this specific area? What are some things that you could share, that you could gracefully share with our audience that you really think would add value to them as well?
Well, I think, we have to kind of look at as I said, as the bigger picture. What do you really want? Do you want to stay, let's say, I'll just go back to the person living in the United States. Do you want to stay living in the United States, or are you interested in also moving abroad? Because then that also helps as well with that diversification, and then potentially also lowering your personal income tax requirements as well, not just the corporate ones. So we really need to look at the big picture. Do you want to stay where you're at? Do you want to move? Are there certain countries that you just have no interest in and don't want to have your company in? We've had clients that come up and say, well, and I'm not going to list specific countries or things like that, but they're just like, I will not have my business in this specific country. And that's fine. There's options. And then there's some that they don't mind paying taxes. So we also have to look at, what is your tax rate? Like, what are you paying right now? We had a client move to Italy, and they had a flat tax rate of 100,000 euro per year. And they were happy with that because they were saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so sometimes we don't want to look at just the percentage. Like, I've had one person that said, I don't want to pay tax anywhere. I don't care where I need to live. I don't care what I have to do. I'm like, I mean, it's doable, of course, But to say that you don't care where you live, yes, you do. You do, because you want to be living in a place that you enjoy living. You want to enjoy the weather, the environment, things like that. We also have to think where your corporation's going to be. Do you have to spend some time there? Do you need to get residency? Going back to Dubai, you have to spend, I think it's a week or two a year in Dubai. So the person from the United States would have to then get residency to open up the business and spend time there. And if that's what a person wants, great, that works. But if they don't want to, because they're like, oh, I don't want to be stuck to that and have to do it, well, then that might not be the best option. So we do have to look at the lifestyle they want, and what they're willing to do to make sure we get the best option for them. And there's tons of options out there. And even if we don't get you to zero tax, if we get down to single digits, that is still thousands and thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars that we help people save just on the corporate level. And then again, depending if they want to move, to save them on their personal income tax as well. And then they can do whatever they want with that. They can reinvest that money back into their company. They can use it to, I mean, if they want to pay themselves more, they can, but then we have to look at where they're living, because that personal income tax rate, they're going to have to pay taxes on that. Or do they want to do some philanthropy work and donate, but they have more of their cash that they've made to do with what they want?
Yeah, no, I love that. And as you're just, speaking from your experience, it's kind of, I can't help but connect the dots, like from my experience too, that it's important to understand where your vision is, where you want to expand. What are the markets? Study research, right? Research the markets you want to tap into. And usually there's always a purpose behind why you want to expand in those markets. Like for me, for example, I just expanded to Europe because obviously I have a connection to that. I'm natively from there, right? And I see opportunity and I see connection, right? So I think it's really important to kind of have clarity on that. And I'm sure that's, what you also support businesses with, to get that clarity, sort of like where you like to expand and where is that base going to be based on kind of where they are and where they foresee the future for themselves personally, but also professionally for their companies, because everything that we do in our businesses really stems from our personal, ahas or intuition, or wherever we see, envision ourselves in the next 5, 10, 20. Because we're all visionaries who live in the future. We're all used to being going there and then working backwards, with a company, with our companies. I think it's really important to understand, like, what are the how do you navigate the area that you just talked about. And yeah, I mean, that really streamlines the process and ensures that you're moving the right things forward at the same time. And just like you said, if you want to obviously save that money for other buckets or projects that are soul projects, love projects, whatever, right? Because at the end of the day, not everything in business needs to be able to generate profit, especially if you have those channels and those revenues already streamlining well, right? Everything else can be a complementary to what you do. So it just opens up so much more opportunity, for sure, as well. Sally, I like to get behind your purpose. How did you get to do this work? What were some of the most meaningful moments?
It's the life I live, and that I've been living for well over a decade. So to back up like quite a bit, the first kind of inclination I had of a bit of a different life, I was in high school. And I remember it was winter in Canada, and anybody who's from Canada or knows, like, it gets ridiculously cold. And I remember we were outside school one day, so it's probably about 15 or 16. And I said to my friends, I said, I think I've been switched at birth. And they were like, what? Your parents aren't your parents? And I said, well, not literally. Like, my parents are my parents. I do believe that. And I said, but I don't think I'm meant to live in Canada for my entire life. And it was just a weird kind of feeling I had. And then, of course, it passed. And then years and years later, a number of things had happened, and I was just like, you know what, it's time for me to leave. But prior to that, I had bought a place down in Costa Rica, and I was renting it out. It was my future retirement home, or that's how the plan was. But as all good plans go, life gets in the way. And I got a letter in the mail one day saying, we're auditing you from 3 years ago, my tax return from 3 years previous. And I was like, okay, whatever, no problem. Like, I did my taxes. I had my stuff for my rental property from my property management company and everything else. So I sent them everything they wanted. And they basically, long story short, they said, well, we're going to accept all the income that you claimed, but we're not going to accept any deductions. So none of the management fees, the cleaning, the pool maintenance, the anything. And so they said, so we've redone your taxes and now you owe us X amount of dollars. And because that was from 3 years ago, you also owe us 3 years of interest on that. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I did everything right. I did it the right way. Like I claimed my income, I claimed the expenses from my property management company. And so at that point, that's when I thought, okay, I'm going to learn how these taxes work because I used to think I'm in Canada. I'm a Canadian. I live here. I need to have my company here. I need to have all my bank accounts here because I'm Canadian. And I quickly started to find out that that's actually not true. Just because I'm Canadian, I can have a company in almost any country in the world. Of course, there's going to be some that we can't. And then in 2011, I decided to leave Canada and move to Costa Rica, and that was kind of then the beginning of my journey. I've lived in Spain and now in Montenegro, but I do travel quite a bit. And so with all of those places, I've gone through the process of citizen or of residency, opening up companies and things like that for almost 15 years now. And so it's just been my experience. And when things really kind of turned, when I thought I need to make this a business, because before friends would ask me and I would just give information to, oh yeah, do this, do this. And I didn't really think much of it because I had my other companies that I was running. But when COVID hit and the Canadian government started to threaten to not renew passports or give out passports for people who didn't get vaccinated, and when the trucker protest happened and they started to freeze people's bank accounts for protesting or even supporting the protesters, that's when I thought this is absurd. Like, whether you agree or disagree with the vaccination, like if I don't agree with what the government's doing, to then say you're not going to give me my passport or you're going to freeze my bank accounts for the money that I've earned and I've already paid taxes on, that is tyranny. That's ludicrous. Like, and so that's when I really decided to really start to push forward and started Global Citizen Life, because people need to know that they don't need to be stuck under the control of any one single government. If you don't like what they're doing, there are options. You have to take steps and put things into place. And it does take a bit of time. But I will never be stuck under the control of the Canadian government because I've made sure I have options in place.
Mm. Well, I love your story also because I see it so much, repeated into even the reason why I do what I do. It sometimes stems from pain, from things that don't go to source's plan or whatever we all believe in, or the universe's plan, because I know we all understand that we're part of that. And then that kind of just is that dot that kind of drives us in a whole new exploratory direction, which seems a
Mm.
bit scary and all of that. But I always really believe that it's the dots that are always getting connected, so that we're able to scale our impact. And that's kind of what I heard from your story too, where we all begin with kind of the people we know, and then in order to scale the impact, obviously we have to structure it out as an actual company. And kind of that's what I heard from you. I think, Sally, something of high interest, especially with your diverse expertise and worldview that you have, with over a decade plus experience that you mentioned. I want to ask you around Canadian market. I know that obviously the U.S. market, Canadian, the U.K. market are, not to mention Asia, are some of the obviously still top, powerful markets where people have, options, and money is, in abundance, for these markets. What is something that you have learned from the Canadian market that you could share with our audience today? Maybe something to focus around, like behaviors, cultural behaviors there. How do people make purchasing decisions? Just in case someone wants to expand their services there, or I mean, most of the business listening today are going to be in the service space. So, what are some of your insightful thoughts around that?
Well, I think, I mean, we're in really interesting times right now, with elections coming up this year, next year. Um, And so, one thing, I mean, I do believe there's a difference between where your company is and where your clients are, right? So, my clients generally are North America, Canada, the United States, and some in the UK, the few in Australia every now and then. But I don't have my corporation in any one of those countries. It's best to keep your corporation outside of those. So we do separate where the corporation is doesn't matter to whether it's the services that you're where you're doing business, right? It's then where your head office is, where you're paying taxes, and where your banking is. And if we have it outside of our home country, then we have better protection, less likely to be sued. The government has a harder time trying to freeze our assets. And so it's kind of it's more of that protection base, not really where our clients are. There's great opportunities for services in the United States, in Canada, even in the UK, but I wouldn't have my corporation in any of those countries.
Mm. Gotcha. All right. Well, food for thought for anyone kind of just taking a look at that worldview. Because sometimes, just like moving, right? I find the same. I'm like, you can have a base or two, but then you can just be free to explore. It sounds like a similar concept, just kind of how I'm hearing it on my end as well. Well, Sally, thank you so much for what you just shared so far. I try to keep these conversations short and sweet, because I really at this moment in time, we all appreciate everyone's attention and kind of tuning in. So I like to keep it short, sweet, honoring everyone's time, but also obviously really focusing on a few fundamentals that are going to move everybody further, faster. So I really want to thank you for what you just shared thus far and the amazing experience that you have gathered along your personal journey as well, personal and professional. And before we end today's conversation, I usually love to end with a final message. It could be anything that you feel called to share with our audience. It can be inspired by our convo. It can be inspired by your work. Whatever is it that you really want to leave them with, and also where is it that at least we started this conversation, we can further send them for maybe free resources or anything else that's of high interest that they can take as a nice natural next step and then further connect with you, because we really value, well, I personally always value personal connections and relationships. So, having you in their network, I'm sure will absolutely add value to both parties, whoever feels compelled to be able to connect just beyond this conversation. So, final message, and where do we send the audience?
I think if you do absolutely nothing more, open up a bank account in another country and have some money in there. Call it a rainy day fund, call it insurance, call it whatever you want. But in case something happens, whether it's the government freezes your bank account, identity theft, your bank gets hacked, a number of things, it is so important to have funds in another country that aren't tied to where you live. And you'll have a debit card and access online banking to that. So very, very important. I think that's the number one thing people can do to help themselves. And if they want to get to know more about me and chat and the services that we offer, anything like that, my website is globalcitizenlife.org. So it's .org.
Okay, beautiful. Oh, that's very wise advice, especially with where we're going structurally and how the new world is forming. I call it the new world. Um, yeah, on all dimensions. So I definitely would encourage everyone. Thank you so much, Sally, for sharing, to go check out Sally's website. And I'm sure it's like your hub. I mean, usually my website is my hub. I'm sure you have resources and ways to further connect with the audience. Again, thank you so much, Sally, for coming on. Thank you for sharing what you do and also the service that you're able to put out there in the world and helping individuals first and foremost, right? Because before you're a company, we're just a community of people. And then obviously transferring that over to their businesses as well. Thank you so much for being here today. And I want to always thank you for your attention. I definitely value your time and your attention. And I really hope that, again, you walked away with great information and you just met another new beautiful friend. But just don't forget to subscribe, share this show, and also leave us a review so that you don't miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll